The discovery. Mujay had spent years searching for lost things in space. He was a scavenger, moving from one dead planet to another, looking for anything valuable. He worked alone, trusting no one. Space was dangerous, and people would do anything to survive. Today, his ship, the Iron Hawk, floated above a strange planet. The planet had no name, just a number, X-92. It was covered in thick clouds and endless mountains. No one lived here, at least not anymore. The scanners showed ruins deep inside a canyon. Mujay's instincts told him there was something important down there. He put on his oxygen suit, grabbed his plasma rifle, and landed his ship near the canyon. The air was thin, and the wind howled like a beast. Jagged rocks surrounded him as he climbed down. He could see pieces of broken stone, strange symbols carved into the walls. This was not a normal ruin. As he stepped deeper, the ground shook slightly. Mujay froze. Was it an earthquake? No, it felt different, like something was waking up. He kept moving, his boots crunching against the dry ground. Then he saw it. A massive entrance, a doorway taller than any human. It was covered in golden symbols that glowed faintly, as if whispering a forgotten story. The doors were slightly open. Mujay felt a shiver run down his spine. This place was ancient. He stepped inside. The Temple of the Mask. The air was still, heavy with dust. Mujay's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing huge stone statues lined against the walls. Each statue wore a mask, different from the others. Some had long, sharp faces, others had smooth, featureless designs. At the center of the temple was an altar, and on that altar sat something that made Mujay stop breathing for a moment. A golden mask. It was perfectly shaped, smooth and polished, like it was made yesterday. It had two glowing red eyes, and strange symbols carved along its edges. It almost looked alive. Mujay took a step forward. His fingers tingled. His mind screamed at him to leave, but his heart told him this was a treasure unlike any other. Carefully, he reached out and touched it. Boom! A sudden force rushed through his body. A wave of energy surged into his bones. The entire temple lit up, symbols glowing bright gold. The statue's eyes turned red, and the ground shook violently. Mujay staggered backward, gripping the mask. Then, a deep rumbling sound echoed through the temple. Mujay turned, heart pounding. Shadows moved in the darkness. At first, he thought they were just illusions, but then they stepped forward. The warriors awakened. From the darkness, figures emerged, tall, armored aliens with black and gold armor, their faces hidden behind sharp, curved helmets. They carried long energy spears, and their eyes glowed red. Mujay raised his plasma rifle, ready to fight. But before he could react, something shocking happened. The warriors knelt before him. Every single one of them lowered their heads, placing their weapons on the ground. Their leader, a massive warrior with a thick golden cape, stepped forward and spoke in a deep, commanding voice. The lost emperor has returned. Mujay's breath caught in his throat. What was happening? He looked at the golden mask in his hands. Did they think he was their ruler? The temple trembled again. Outside, the winds roared louder, like the planet itself was coming back to life. Mujay knew one thing for sure. He had just stepped into something far bigger than he had ever imagined. And there was no turning back now. The Chosen One. Mujay stood frozen in the middle of the ancient temple, the golden mask clutched tightly in his hands. The air around him felt thick, charged with unseen energy. The armored aliens before him remained kneeling, their weapons placed on the cold stone floor. The leader, a massive warrior with a golden cape, slowly raised his head. His glowing red eyes locked onto Mujay's, and his voice rumbled like distant thunder. The lost emperor has returned. Mujay's heart pounded. They think I'm their emperor. It was impossible. He was just a scavenger, a nobody drifting through space, looking for valuable scraps to sell. He had no kingdom, no people, no power. Yet here he was, standing before a group of heavily armed warriors who were bowing to him like he was some kind of god. The temple shook again, the golden symbols on the walls pulsing like a heartbeat. Mujay's instincts screamed at him to run, but his legs refused to move. He tightened his grip on the mask. Something about it felt right, as if it belonged to him. But that didn't make sense. The leader stood up, towering over Mujay by at least 2 feet. His golden armor shimmered under the temple's eerie glow. He raised a hand, and the other warriors immediately stood, their posture stiff, disciplined. "Come," the leader commanded. "We must return to the fortress before the Shadow Ones arrive." Mujay frowned. Shadow Ones. Before he could ask, 2 of the warriors stepped forward, grabbing him by the arms, not aggressively, but firmly, like they weren't giving him a choice. "Okay, this is happening." He was led through the temple's giant stone doors, stepping back into the desolate canyon. But the planet was no longer silent. The sky above had changed. What was once a dull, empty void was now filled with storm clouds swirling in unnatural patterns. The wind had picked up, whispering through the ruins in a language Mujay couldn't understand. And then he saw it. A massive floating ship, shaped like a crescent moon, hovered above the canyon. It was unlike any human spacecraft. No visible thrusters, no engines. It hummed with quiet power, as if defying gravity itself. Strange glowing symbols lined its dark metal hull. A long ramp extended from the belly of the ship, waiting for them. Mujay hesitated. Should he really go with them? But he didn't have a choice. The warriors guided him up the ramp, and the moment he stepped inside, the ship sealed shut behind him. The flight to the fortress. The inside of the ship was just as alien as the outside. The walls pulsed with soft golden light, and everything seemed to be alive, like the ship itself was breathing. Mujay could hear a faint hum vibrating beneath his feet. The leader motioned for him to follow. They walked through a long corridor that led to what looked like a command chamber. A massive window revealed the view outside, the canyon below shrinking as the ship ascended into the sky. Mujay took a deep breath. He needed answers. "All right," he finally said, breaking the silence. "What is this place? Who are you people? And why the hell do you think I'm your emperor?" The leader turned, his expression unreadable behind his golden helmet. "I am High Commander Zortal, protector of the Imperial line." He gestured toward the mask in Mujay's hands. "That relic is the crown of dominion, worn only by the true ruler of the empire. It has chosen you." Mujay let out a dry laugh. "That's a mistake. I'm not your ruler." Zortal's eyes glowed brighter. "The mask does not make mistakes." Before Mujay could argue, an alarm blared through the ship, the lights flashing red. The warriors in the room immediately snapped to attention. "They've found us," one of them said, his voice sharp. Mujay turned toward the window. In the distance, dark shapes appeared in the sky. Other ships, sleek and deadly-looking, moving fast. Zortal growled. "The Shadowborn." Ambush in the sky. The ship lurched as it changed course, speeding toward a distant mountain range. Mujay barely kept his balance. He had no idea what was happening, but one thing was clear. Whoever these Shadowborn were, they were bad news. Suddenly, the entire ship shook violently. Explosions erupted outside as enemy ships opened fire, their energy blasts streaking through the sky like burning comets. The warriors around Mujay moved quickly, securing weapons, shouting commands in their strange language. "Brace for impact," someone yelled. Before Mujay could react, the ship was hit, a direct blast to its side. The force sent him flying backward, slamming into a metal wall. His vision blurred. His ears rang. Everything spun. He felt the ship tilting, falling. The alarm screamed louder, red lights flashing everywhere. Then, darkness. The Emperor falls. Mujay opened his eyes to a sharp pain in his head. He was lying on a cold metal floor. the scent of burnt wires and smoke filling his nose. The ship had crashed. Groaning, he pushed himself up. The warriors were already recovering, some injured but alive. Zortal pulled Mujay to his feet. "We must move," the commander said urgently. "The Shadowborn will come for you." Mujay swallowed hard, gripping the golden mask. What had he gotten himself into? Outside the shattered remains of the ship, dark figures approached, enemy warriors, cloaked in shadows, their glowing red eyes locked onto him. They weren't here to talk. They were here to kill him. Mujay clenched his fists. He wasn't a king. He wasn't a hero. But if he wanted to survive, he had to fight like one. The trial of kings. Mujay's hands trembled as he held the golden mask close to his chest. The smell of burnt metal and smoke filled the air. The wreckage of the downed ship lay scattered across the rocky ground, its once powerful engines now silent. The Shadowborn warriors stood in a half-circle, their weapons raised, their glowing red eyes locked onto him. Their armor was dark, jagged and pulsing with strange energy. Mujay knew, deep inside, that these were not ordinary enemies. They were assassins, killers who had come for only one reason: to eliminate him. Zortal, the massive alien commander who had sworn loyalty to him, stepped forward. His golden cape fluttered in the wind as he drew his energy blade, its edge humming with raw power. The remaining Imperial warriors followed suit, forming a protective line in front of Mujay. "Stay behind us, my lord," Zortal said. "We will protect you." Mujay swallowed hard. He wasn't anyone's lord. He was a scavenger, a survivor, nothing more. But here, in this moment, surrounded by warriors willing to die for him, he felt something stir deep inside. A responsibility he never asked for. The Shadowborn leader, a tall and menacing figure clad in black and crimson armor, stepped forward. His helmet had sharp, curved horns, and his voice was like rusted metal scraping against stone. "That mask does not belong to you, human," he snarled. "Surrender it now, and we will grant you a quick death." Mujay clenched his jaw. His heart pounded in his chest. He had two choices: hand over the mask and die, or fight. He took a deep breath. Then, gripping the mask tighter, he stepped forward. "Come take it," he said. The Shadowborn leader let out a low growl. Then, with a sharp gesture, he commanded his warriors to attack. The battle for survival. The air exploded with movement. The Shadowborn rushed forward, their blades glowing with dark energy. Zortal and his warriors met them head-on, clashing in a violent storm of steel and fire. Sparks flew as weapons struck, and the ground shook beneath their feet. Mujay had never seen a battle like this. These warriors moved with inhuman speed, their reflexes sharp, their blows lethal. It was nothing like the petty space fights he had been in before. He ducked just in time as a Shadowborn warrior swung at him. The blade missed his head by inches. Mujay rolled to the side, grabbing a fallen plasma pistol from the ground. He raised it and fired. Bang! The energy shot slammed into the warrior's chest, sending him staggering back. But he didn't fall. He barely seemed affected. "Oh, that's not good," Mujay thought. The Shadowborn warrior lunged again. Mujay barely managed to dodge, stumbling backward over the wreckage. He wasn't a soldier. He didn't know how to fight like this. He needed an advantage. Then, suddenly, the golden mask in his hands began to glow. Mujay gasped as a surge of energy rushed through his body. His mind was flooded with images, memories not his own. He saw visions of ancient battles, tactics, and combat techniques. His muscles felt stronger, his senses sharper. It was as if the mask was teaching him how to fight. The Shadowborn warrior attacked again, but this time, Mujay was ready. He dodged smoothly, faster than before. Without thinking, he spun, grabbing a fallen energy blade from the ground. He blocked the attack, twisting his wrist in a perfect counter-move. The Shadowborn warrior hesitated for just a second. Mujay didn't. He thrust the blade forward, driving it deep into the warrior's chest. The enemy let out a strangled gasp before collapsing to the ground, motionless. Mujay stood there, breathing heavily, the golden mask still glowing in his hand. He had won, but the battle wasn't over yet. The call to the throne. The remaining Shadowborn, seeing their leader injured, retreated into the darkness, vanishing like smoke. The battlefield fell silent, the only sounds being the crackling fires from the wreckage. Zortal approached Mujay, looking at him with a mix of respect and awe. "The mask has accepted you," he said. "You are truly the one." Mujay exhaled, his hands still shaking. He looked at the golden mask, now realizing its true power. It wasn't just a relic. It was a crown, and whether he wanted it or not, he had just proven himself worthy of the throne. Zortal knelt before him once more. "My emperor," he said, bowing his head, "it is time to reclaim your kingdom." Mujay looked out at the distant horizon, where a massive alien fortress loomed in the distance. It was his next destination, his next trial, and the beginning of a war far greater than he could ever imagine. The rebel attack. Mujay stood at the edge of the landing platform, staring at the colossal alien fortress in the distance. It was like nothing he had ever seen before, floating above jagged cliffs, held up by invisible forces. Its towers stretched into the sky, golden lights glowing like distant stars. From its center, a massive energy beam pulsed into the clouds above, sending ripples of power through the atmosphere. The imperial stronghold of Voltor 9. The last true stronghold of the ancient empire. Mujay tightened his grip on the golden mask, its weight suddenly feeling heavier in his hands. He had spent his entire life drifting through space, scavenging for scraps, surviving on wit and luck. And now, somehow, an alien empire wanted him to rule them. He wasn't a king. He wasn't a hero. But after what happened on the battlefield, after the mask had awakened something inside him, Mujay knew there was no turning back. Zortal stood beside him, his golden cape fluttering in the wind. The commander's eyes burned with loyalty and purpose as he gestured toward the fortress. "Come, my emperor," he said. "Your throne awaits." Mujay sighed, shaking his head. "I told you, I'm not your emperor." Zortal didn't respond. He simply placed a hand on his chest in a salute and started walking toward the fortress. Mujay exhaled. "This is insane," he muttered. Then, with one last look at the horizon, he followed. The betrayal within. Inside the fortress, thousands of warriors lined the great hall, standing at attention as Mujay entered. Their armor gleamed under the massive golden chandeliers, their faces hidden behind ceremonial masks. As Mujay walked through, he felt their eyes on him, their silent judgment weighing heavily on his shoulders. Some of them truly believed he was their lost ruler. Others were not convinced. At the far end of the hall, an enormous throne sat atop a staircase made of polished obsidian. It was ancient, its surface covered in glowing alien inscriptions. Mujay hesitated as he looked at it. "You expect me to sit there?" he asked. Zortal nodded. "It is your destiny." Mujay exhaled sharply. "Yeah, well, I don't believe in destiny." Before anyone could respond, a loud explosion shook the fortress. The entire hall trembled, and the warriors turned sharply toward the entrance, drawing their weapons. A moment later, a second explosion ripped through the left wing of the fortress, sending chunks of stone raining down. The air filled with smoke and shouts. Mujay coughed, shielding his eyes. Then, through the haze, dark figures emerged. The Shadowborn's true leader. A new army had entered the fortress, faster, deadlier, and filled with rage. Their leader, a towering figure wrapped in black and crimson robes, strode forward. His face was hidden behind a monstrous shadow-forged mask, its surface shifting like liquid darkness. Zortal immediately stepped in front of Mujay, his energy sword igniting with a loud hiss. "Tiver, traitor of the Empire," Zortal growled. I should have known you would come. The figure, Tiver, let out a deep, bone-chilling laugh. You bow to a human, he mocked. You disgrace the legacy of our people, Zortal. Mujay narrowed his eyes. Yeah. Well, nice to meet you too. Tiver's glowing red eyes locked onto Mujay. You do not belong here, scavenger. That mask is mine. Mujay felt a surge of energy from the mask, like it was reacting to Tiver's presence. He gritted his teeth. Sorry, pal, he said. Finders keepers. Tiver's hand shot up, and suddenly, Mujay couldn't breathe. A dark force wrapped around his throat, lifting him off the ground. His vision blurred as he gasped for air, his body frozen in place. The mask in his hands burned like fire, its symbols glowing violently. Tiver stepped closer, his voice low and filled with venom. You are a mistake, he hissed. That crown was meant for a god, not a pathetic human. Mujay struggled, his fingers clawing at his throat. He felt the mask pulling at him, like it was trying to awaken something deeper inside him. Then, boom. Zortal slammed into Tiver, breaking his concentration. Mujay collapsed onto the ground, gasping for air. The fortress erupted into battle. The fall of the fortress. Tiver's army swarmed the halls, clashing with the Imperial warriors. Plasma blasts, energy swords, and alien weapons filled the air as chaos unfolded. Mujay staggered to his feet, his vision still spinning. He saw Zortal battling Tiver in a fierce duel, their swords colliding in bursts of fire and light. Then, out of the corner of his eye, something moved. A figure in golden armor, one of the Imperial warriors, rushed toward him. But something was off. His eyes, they burned with a strange red glow. Before Mujay could react, the warrior lunged forward, stabbing a blade into his side. Pain exploded through Mujay's body. He stumbled backward, clutching his wound. Blood dripped between his fingers. The warrior smirked. The throne is not yours, human, he whispered. The empire belongs to the Shadowborn. Mujay's eyes widened in shock. A traitor. There had been a traitor among them all along. The fortress shook again, explosions rocking the entire structure. Mujay fell to his knees, struggling to stay conscious. He could hear Zortal shouting his name, but his voice sounded distant. Everything blurred. His vision darkened. And then, nothing. The betrayal. Mujay drifted between consciousness and darkness. His body felt cold, his breath shallow. He could hear distant shouts, the clash of weapons, the rumbling destruction of the fortress collapsing around him. But it all felt far away. His fingers twitched, brushing against something smooth and solid. The golden mask, it was still with him. He held onto it like a lifeline, even as his mind swam in confusion. Then, pain. A sharp burning sensation flared in his side, jolting him awake. His eyes snapped open. He was on the floor, blood pooling beneath him. His vision blurred, but he saw a figure standing over him, the same traitorous warrior who had stabbed him. The warrior smirked, his red glowing eyes filled with malice. You should have died quickly, human, he sneered. It would have been painless. Mujay gritted his teeth, forcing himself to breathe. Every movement sent waves of pain through his ribs, but he wasn't dead. Not yet. And he sure as hell wasn't going to die here. Escape from the fortress. A sudden explosion rocked the hall, sending shockwaves through the crumbling fortress. The traitorous warrior stumbled, and Mujay took his chance. With all his remaining strength, he gripped a shattered piece of metal beside him and lunged. SHLNK. The jagged metal sank into the warrior's thigh. He let out a howl of pain, staggering backward. Mujay didn't wait. He rolled to the side, biting down his groan of agony, and reached for the plasma pistol on a fallen soldier's belt. Before the traitor could recover, Mujay fired. The energy blast hit the warrior square in the chest, sending him crashing into the rubble. Mujay gasped for air, trying to keep himself steady. His vision was still spinning, and the walls around him cracked and crumbled, but he had no time to waste. He pushed himself up. One step, then another. He had to move. A familiar voice roared over the chaos. "My Emperor!" Mujay turned just in time to see Zortal charging through the smoke, his golden armor scorched but his eyes burning with determination. The alien commander grabbed Mujay by the arm, practically hauling him upright. "We must leave. The fortress will not hold," Zortal shouted. Mujay barely had the strength to nod. His body was screaming, but he had to survive. He wasn't going to die like this, not before he figured out who had betrayed him. And why. The chase. Zortal dragged Mujay through the collapsing halls, dodging falling debris and burning wreckage. The sounds of battle still echoed behind them, but the Imperial forces were losing. The Shadowborn had already won this fight. Through his hazy vision, Mujay caught glimpses of dead warriors, their bodies strewn across the marble floors. Smoke and flames licked at the towering pillars, and through the shattered windows, he could see the Shadowborn fleet hovering above, dark and ominous. A massive warship was preparing to fire its main cannon, aiming directly at the fortress. They're going to wipe this place out. Mujay's heart pounded. They had to get out. Now. Zortal led him through a side corridor, where a sleek transport ship waited. A few remaining Imperial warriors were already aboard, securing what little they could. Just as Mujay and Zortal reached the ramp, a group of Shadowborn assassins appeared behind them. "Go, now," Zortal bellowed, turning to face them. Mujay stopped in his tracks. "No, I'm not leaving you," he shouted. Zortal's expression hardened. "You are the Emperor now. Your survival is all that matters." The Shadowborn warriors charged. With one last look at Mujay, Zortal roared and attacked, meeting them in brutal combat. Mujay felt his chest tighten. Every instinct screamed at him to stay, to fight. But the ship's engines ignited, and the remaining warriors grabbed him, forcing him aboard. As the ramp sealed shut, Mujay's last glimpse of Zortal was the commander standing against impossible odds, his blade cutting through enemy after enemy, his golden cape drenched in blood. Then, in the next second, the fortress exploded. Regrouping in the shadows, the ship shot through the sky, dodging enemy fire as it sped away from the ruined fortress. Mujay collapsed into a seat, his mind spinning. Zortal was gone. The Empire's stronghold was nothing but rubble. And worst of all, someone inside the Empire had betrayed him. He clenched his fists, his breathing ragged. He needed answers. One of the warriors, a female officer with silver-plated armor, knelt before him. "My Emperor," she said softly, "we have lost Valter 9, but we are not finished." Mujay looked up, his jaw tightening. "Who betrayed us?" The officer hesitated. Then, finally, she said, "It was one of the High Lords." Mujay's grip on the golden mask tightened. A High Lord, one of the Empire's ruling council, had been working with the Shadowborn all along. Someone inside his own court had orchestrated this attack. He closed his eyes, his rage simmering beneath the surface. Whoever it was, they had cost him everything. And now he was going to make them pay. The final battle. Mujay sat in the dimly lit war chamber of the hidden rebel outpost, staring at the golden mask on the table before him. The metal shimmered under the flickering lights, its surface etched with ancient symbols of power. It had brought him here, dragged him into this war, crowned him a ruler he never wanted to be. And now, the fate of an entire empire rested on his shoulders. The room was silent except for the hum of the ship's generators. Around him stood the last loyalists of the Empire, a ragtag group of warriors, exiled commanders, and battle-worn survivors from the fortress attack. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and scattered across the galaxy, but their eyes burned with determination. Across the table, Commander Lavia, the silver-armored officer who had saved him, folded her arms. "We have confirmation," she said grimly. "The traitor among the High Lords is Lord Verak. He orchestrated the fortress's downfall. He handed the Empire to the Shadowborn." Mujay exhaled sharply. He had trusted Verak, and Verak had sold them out. The commander continued, her tone sharp. "He now sits in the Imperial Palace on Corva Prime, ruling as a puppet for the Shadowborn." Mujay clenched his fists. Corva Prime, the heart of the Empire, the place he should have ruled from. A holographic display lit up, showing the massive city world of Corva Prime. Towering spires of gold and silver reached into the clouds, surrounded by orbital defense stations. The palace sat at its center, protected by energy shields and legions of elite guards. It was a fortress within a fortress. Mujay took a deep breath. "Then that's where we end this." The plan. The chamber erupted into tense discussions. How could they possibly breach the most heavily defended planet in the Empire? The Shadowborn controlled the fleets, Verak controlled the army, and their forces were barely enough to launch a full-scale war. But Mujay didn't want a war. He wanted a reckoning. Instead of brute force, they would strike fast and surgically. A small infiltration team, him included, would sneak into the palace, confront Verak, and cut the head off the traitors. With Verak dead, the Shadowborn's hold on the Empire would crumble. It was a suicide mission, and Mujay didn't care. Infiltration. Entering Corva Prime. 3 days later, the infiltration team stood inside a stolen Shadowborn transport ship, disguised as part of Verak's supply convoy. The dark cityscape of Corva Prime loomed ahead, bathed in crimson light. Towering war machines patrolled the streets, and massive banners of the Shadowborn hung from the palace walls. Mujay adjusted his black combat suit, the golden mask now secured at his belt. Around him stood Commander Lavia, 2 former Imperial assassins, and a cybernetic demolition expert named Kale. They had one shot. As their ship landed on the palace's docking bay, the team moved quickly, silently eliminating the guards and slipping through the halls like ghosts. Dark corridors, massive statues of past emperors, and the eerie glow of the palace's energy cores surrounded them as they made their way toward the throne room. Every step brought Mujay closer to the man who had destroyed everything. Then, an alarm blared. They had been discovered, face to face with betrayal. The palace roared to life. Shadowborn warriors flooded the halls, energy blades flashing, plasma bolts firing. The team fought viciously, taking down enemies as they pushed forward. Mujay moved like a predator, his reflexes sharper than ever. The golden mask's power pulsed through his veins, guiding his strikes, making him faster, stronger, deadlier. Then, at last, they'd reached the massive golden doors of the throne room. Mujay kicked them open. Inside, seated on the Emperor's throne, was Lord Verak. He was dressed in ornate golden robes, his face sharp with arrogance. At his side stood Tiver, the Shadowborn warlord, his monstrous armor glowing with dark energy. Verak smirked. "Ah, the lost Emperor returns," he said, leaning forward. "You should have stayed dead." Mujay's hand tightened around the golden mask. His pulse thundered. "You betrayed us," Mujay growled. "You sold the Empire to them." Verak chuckled, rising from his throne. "No, boy. I saved the Empire. The future belongs to the Shadowborn. You are a relic of the past." Mujay had heard enough. "Then let's finish this." The final duel. Verak drew a long, curved energy blade, its surface crackling with power. Tiver ignited his twin sabers, dark energy swirling around them. Mujay placed the golden mask over his face, and everything changed. His vision expanded, his mind flooded with ancient battle instincts. His body felt unstoppable. Then, they charged. The battle exploded. Verak was faster than Mujay expected, his blade slashing in precise, deadly arcs. Mujay blocked, dodged, countered, his movements guided by the mask's power. Sparks flew as their blades clashed again and again. At the same time, Tiver battled Commander Levia, their fight just as fierce. Mujay spun, slashing low, forcing Verac back, but the traitor was relentless, fueled by years of training. Then, in a flash of movement, Verac landed a deep slash across Mujay's arm. Mujay gritted his teeth, ignoring the pain. He wouldn't let Verac win. Not after everything he had done. With a roar, Mujay unleashed the full power of the golden mask. His blade moved like lightning, overwhelming Verac. And then, he struck. Slash! Verac gasped, staggering backward. Blood dripped from his chest. He looked at Mujay in disbelief, his mouth opening, then closing. And then, he collapsed. Victory and the new emperor. The battle ended. Tiver, seeing Verac fall, roared in fury, but before he could react, Levia thrust her blade through his back. The warlord stiffened, then crumpled. The Shadowborn army, realizing their leaders were dead, scattered. Mujay stood over Verac's lifeless body, his breathing heavy. He looked at the throne. For the first time, he felt it. This empire was his. He slowly turned to the warriors around him, the ones who had fought, bled, and died for him. And then, he sat on the throne. Mujay was no longer just a scavenger, no longer just a survivor. He was now emperor, and he had a galaxy to rebuild. The human emperor. The golden throne felt cold beneath Mujay's fingers. He sat at the highest seat of power, overlooking the vast imperial hall, its towering pillars inscribed with ancient alien symbols. The war was over. The battle had been won. But his war was far from finished. Verac was dead. Tiver was slain. The Shadowborn had scattered into the void, leaderless and broken. The traitors had been purged, their banners burned from history. Yet, Mujay could still feel it, the weight of the empire pressing down on him. A scavenger, a nobody. Now, an emperor. He exhaled slowly, running his fingers over the golden mask beside him. It had guided him through battles, had awakened something inside him. But it had also made him a target. The room was silent. The halls, once filled with traitors and conquerors, now stood hushed and waiting. Then, the doors opened. The Imperial Council assembles. A dozen figures entered, each wearing the robes of their station. The High Lords of the Empire, the last of the loyal ones, knelt before him. Commander Levia stood closest, her silver armor reflecting the golden light of the throne room. Her eyes burned with pride and discipline. "The empire is yours, my emperor," she said. "The people await your command." Mujay's hands curled into fists. My empire. He had spent his whole life answering to no one. He had been a wanderer, a scavenger, a man living only for himself. Now he sat on the most powerful seat in the galaxy, and all eyes were on him. He felt the mask calling to him, whispering its ancient power into his mind. It had belonged to rulers before him. It had made them gods. But he was not a god. He was a man. He stood, his voice echoing across the chamber. "Tell me, Levia, do the people want a king?" The warriors exchanged glances, confused. Mujay smirked. "Because I'm not here to be a king." Silence. Levia frowned. "Then what are you, my lord?" He picked up the golden mask, feeling its weight. "I am something new. A new kind of empire." For centuries, the empire had been ruled by bloodlines, traditions, and unbreakable laws. The people had worshipped their rulers, had fought for them, had died for them. And where had it led? Corruption, betrayal, war. Mujay had no interest in wearing a crown or sitting on a throne of lies. If the empire was to survive, it could not remain a kingdom of fear. It had to change. Mujay stepped forward. "We end the rule of kings and conquerors." A murmur rippled through the council. Shock, uncertainty, even fear. He continued, his voice unwavering. No more empires built on blood. No more rulers born into power. We will rebuild this empire, but not as it was. He pointed to the grand imperial banners, their golden insignias fluttering across the walls. The people will have a voice. The warriors will fight for more than a throne. The empire will no longer belong to one man. Lavia studied him carefully. You would tear down the empire you just won. Mujay shook his head. No, I will build it into something better. The loyalists react. Some of the high lords bowed their heads, recognizing the vision in his words. Others remained rigid and unreadable. They had spent lifetimes under the rule of kings and warlords. The idea of an emperor giving up power was unthinkable. One lord, an aged warrior with battle scars across his face, stepped forward. And what of those who still follow the old ways? Mujay met his gaze. They will have a choice. The old warrior nodded slowly. And if they refuse? Mujay's voice was quiet, but filled with finality. Then they will no longer be part of this empire. The room fell silent. Then, one by one, the warriors and council members knelt before him. Not as a god, not as a conqueror, but as the one who would reshape the galaxy, the Shadowborn's last move. Just as Mujay felt the weight of victory settling in, a warning siren blared. The palace shook violently, and outside the windows, the sky turned black. Mujay's eyes snapped to the horizon. A colossal warship, larger than any he had ever seen, loomed over the city. It was no ordinary Shadowborn fleet, it was their final weapon. A hologram flickered to life in the throne room. A new enemy stood before them, cloaked in shadows, his eyes burning like dying suns. You think you've won, little emperor, the figure sneered. You've only delayed the inevitable. Mujay's grip on the golden mask tightened. The Shadowborn were not finished, and this war was far from over. The Shadowborn's last stand. The air inside the imperial palace was thick with tension. Outside, the sky was blackened by the monstrous Shadowborn warship, its sheer size eclipsing the city below. Mujay stood tall at the throne's edge, his fingers wrapped around the golden mask. His heart thundered, but his mind was clear. This was it, the final battle. A hologram of the Shadowborn leader flickered before him, a being wrapped in writhing shadows, its burning red eyes piercing through the darkness. You believe you have won, human, the figure sneered. The empire does not belong to you, it belongs to us. Mujay smirked, stepping forward. I don't need to own the empire. He raised the golden mask. I just need to make sure you don't. The figure let out a low, bone-chilling laugh. You think you can stop me? Mujay slipped the mask over his face, its power rushing through his veins. His vision sharpened, his body felt lighter, stronger, faster. The mask had been worn by emperors of old, but now it was his. And he would end this war. The battle begins. The Shadowborn fleet descended, unleashing waves of death upon the city. Buildings crumbled, the streets erupted in fire, and warriors scrambled to defend the palace. Mujay turned to Commander Lavia and the remaining High Lords. Hold the city. I'll take the fight to them. Lavia hesitated. Alone. Mujay's voice was firm. Not alone. He motioned to Kale, the cybernetic demolition expert, and 2 elite Imperial assassins. They had fought alongside him through everything. They weren't just warriors. They were his family now. Kale grinned, cracking his knuckles. Time to blow some Shadowborn to hell. Infiltrating the warship. Under the cover of battle, Mujay and his team boarded a stolen Shadowborn transport and infiltrated the enemy warship. The inside was dark, pulsing with strange alien energy, the walls seemingly alive, shifting and breathing. They moved silently, taking out guards one by one. Every step brought them closer to the core. At last, they reached the command center, and standing there, waiting for them, was the Shadowborn warlord, the leader of their race, a being wrapped in pure, living darkness, its form shifting, its blade crackling with energy so dark it seemed to swallow light itself. Mujay took a deep breath, his grip tightening on his weapon. This was the final fight. The final duel. The warlord moved like a nightmare, faster than anything Mujay had faced before. Their blades clashed in a blur, each strike sending shockwaves through the chamber. Mujay dodged, countered, attacked, his instincts heightened by the mask's power. But the warlord was strong, too strong. Blow after blow, Mujay was forced back, his breath ragged, his muscles burning. Then, pain. The warlord's blade pierced his shoulder, sending waves of agony through his body. He staggered, blood dripping onto the floor. The warlord laughed coldly, standing over him. "You are nothing, human. Just another failure." Mujay gritted his teeth, his vision swimming. The golden mask glowed brighter, whispering to him. Not a king, not a god, a survivor. He tightened his grip on his weapon. And then, he struck. With one final surge of energy, Mujay drove his blade straight into the warlord's chest. The Shadowborn leader let out a roar of agony, his body convulsing as light erupted from within him. And then, he was gone. The end of the Shadowborn. The warship shuddered violently. Without their leader, the Shadowborn forces panicked, retreating. Kale rushed forward. "We need to get out of here." Mujay, still breathing heavily, looked up at the ship's main reactor. It pulsed with unstable energy. "No." He steadied himself. "We finished this." Kale grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that." He planted explosives across the reactor, setting the timer for 5 minutes. The team raced through the corridors, escaping just as the warship erupted into flames, its dark energy imploding upon itself. The last of the Shadowborn, wiped from existence. The Empire reborn. Back in the palace, the sky cleared. The golden banners of the new empire flew high. The war was over. Mujay stood before the people, thousands gathered below the throne. Warriors, civilians, survivors, all looking to him. Waiting. He raised his voice so that all could hear. "This is not the empire of old. We are not ruled by kings, by gods, or by warlords. We are more than that. We are free." The crowd erupted into cheers, voices chanting his name. For the first time in history, the empire belonged to the people. Mujay turned to Levia and Kale. "This is just the beginning." Kale smirked. "What now, Emperor?" Mujay looked out at the stars, the golden mask still glowing softly in his hands. "Now, we rebuild." The end.